So we'll start with some introductions here. First of all, my name is Jessica. I'm with Town Planning Urban Design Collaborative, one of the consultants on here, and I'm the project manager for it.
I'm Andrew Dollar, Athens State University.
I'm Jess Dollar. We are new to town, and we're here in the downtown area.
I'm Jennifer Williamson with the Greater Limestone County Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Nancy McCormick with Progressive Remedy Group. Regina Kyle with Athens State University.
Shirley Garza Martinez, a new transplant from New York City 3 months ago.
Teresa Todd, Athens Limestone County Tourism.
I'm Trent Muldrow with Arnett Muldrow and Associates and part of the project team.
I'm Weston Coleman. I'm with TNC Stamping here in Athens.
Kirk Hamilton, future resident, outspoken critic of uncontrolled growth, and I've lived in a lot of towns that got good and bad things on economic development. I'll put them on the table. Joe DeLapp, Athens State University.
William Main Commercial Real Estate Group. Chris Basinger, Athens City Schools. Lee Bartinian, Athens State.
We've got two back there. Great. And then we have quite a good team on Zoom as well. If I'll go in order, if Trisha, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Trisha Black, Athens resident, and with Main Street, Alabama. Oops, the brain just dropped. Sorry.
Will James?
Hey, I'm Will James. I'm a designer with Amble Studios.
Brad Mallett?
Hi, I'm Brad Mallett. I'm the principal at Amble Studios. We're an architecture firm here in Tim.
Great. People are just on the screen, but Kyle Garrison?
Hello, hello. I'm Kyle Garrison. I'm a relatively brand new resident here to Athens. Just built a house here. We've been in it all 3 months. Just here to learn what the future of my town holds for me.
Bill May?
Yes, this is Bill Main, represented there with my son, William. We're in commercial real estate here in Athens.
Great, thank you all. So now this is pretty free-form kind of conversation. It's anything about economy, employment, businesses, ideas, concerns, comments. Sure, I don't know if there's anything specific you want to.
Yeah, well, there are a couple different angles we could take. Since there's a big group online and a big group in the room, yeah, I've started poking into some of the numbers, and maybe it might be better for me to ask some questions to see if I can get some answers from you all. One of the things I find interesting as I start poking around the numbers is I love to have your just on the ground thoughts. I've already made some phone calls today. So there's like a big, when I use census on the map to assess employment nodes and where people commute, in commute and out commute. That's for private sector jobs only. So you can imagine me having to read the fine print today when Redstone Arsenal showed up as a big blank dot in both, and everything. And knowing that we're talking about, on the Arsenal, 40,000, increasing from 40,000 to 50,000 potential employees, COVID interrupting that in the process. I need y'all to give me some sort of bearing on Redstone Arsenal as it impacts Athens, and how many friends, colleagues, others that and then how you report it. Because I know I think in the Huntsville Chamber, they kind of get their number from Redstone directly. Are you able to get it?
I can get that number. I know we have
Do they split it by?
They can do a breakdown on how many people work on Redstone that live in Athens and Limestone County.
Brilliant. That would be awesome if you could get it. So, but any just anecdotes though, that would help me just understand too. Because I've also looked at, and so I'll do a corollary question to make it even more broad. Is where do people work? Because I see what the top employers are, and I hear a lot about Toyota Mazda, but I also look at the numbers, and the numbers show Target being a big employer, the plant, the nuclear TVA being a big employer. you know, it kind of runs the numbers. So help me with that perspective on your own experience as I dig deeper into it. That would just help me on the overall employment piece.
On Zoom too, you're welcome to unmute and jump in anytime. You're allowed to.
I just got a message from the public relations director at Mazda Toyota. They'll be a free Toyota, the first person that answered. And then she said, just kidding.
I just don't know that there's a single answer.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's, I don't want to call it a buckshot, but I mean, bring Alabama boy out. I mean, it is a little bit of a scattered shot between the large manufacturers, CBA, schools, government, the university.
Do you characterize it as a, I mean, and I'll tell you what you're describing is kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who works in workforce development, I mean, this is our challenge is how do you serve particular industries, much less individual companies, because there's a good breadth of it.
Right.
There's a fair amount of depth to it.
Right.
But it's not, you know, maybe say Huntsville where it's tons of depth in one or two areas.
Well, and I really love hearing that observation, and you're helping me because I've worked a number of years in South Huntsville in particular. And for those who are familiar with Memorial Parkway in South Huntsville, those neighborhoods, I mean, are just loaded with rocket scientists and engineers. I mean, it's just kind of, that's who lives there. And to hear, and when I started looking at these numbers, I just had preconceived notions. And then I'm like, whoa, this economy is way more diverse than South Huntsville's economy is. So just any other echoes in that, because I don't want to bark up a tree and take another. I'm from South Carolina. I don't want to bark up the wrong tree in this assessment.
People I know in the workforce either work at Research Park or on the Arsenal with lots of wide areas. Some are high tech. So I mean, in the security of networks and things like that, the IT systems. So they're commuting in as much as they rode COVID because they're all working from home. You know, 3 of my neighbors all work for missile defense, and so they're commuting down there all the time. What I see this area could probably, you know, bring in the high tech industry. Well, where's your internet pipe come into? What's your capability? You got Google Fiber going through Huntsville. Well, yeah, they snagged it. But what do you have for a main line coming in here that businesses can tap onto? That would be a good thing to explore if you've got it.
Any other thoughts on that?
Google Fiber won't get out of here because they won't have too much.
I think we have fiber on the square here. I think optical geo, given the capacity and bandwidth that they use.
You know, somewhere there's a main trunk coming in.
AT&T has fiber.
I don't remember saying
You can find out where that's going through and you target your, trying to get businesses into that area. You don't have to tap all the way across town with a high speed pipe. It makes it more beneficial. I worked in some areas for the Navy and they're trying to put fiber into some areas where it's cost prohibitive. And if you can say, well, we're only 2 blocks off the main line coming in, we can put a transfer switch into here and feed this 400-acre area for businesses to come in and say, we're doing high tech, because they're going to smaller offices now. And they want to get them out. And I have a friend who worked in the trade world in DC and New York, you know, stock trading and everything. And they went to COVID. He went to his hometown. Instead of an hour on the train every day, he rode his bike for 2 blocks to a small shop. And they're now keeping that office in that town. They're loving it. It cuts costs down. So we got Nashville off the road. Well, why aren't you pulling people on Nashville to work down here in some of that business?
Well, I think, you know, this again, it's reassuring for me to hear that it's a diverse economy. I'm always a bit of a, I know that there's going to be a lot of jobs that, and I'm hearing this, is that left the arsenal that won't go back is very likely. So the idea is that may behoove people may behoove Athens for people to have that flexibility because they don't have to be physically tied to the arsenal behind the gate. It is another interesting fact I'll share with you, and I think if you were here Saturday, you may have seen it. The city of Athens itself actually is a net importer of jobs. And so this is an important consideration, and I think you're touching on this, but I'd love to touch on it more related to the economy. And I'm heading in a direction, and I know we're going to get there, but in 2018, 11,300 people commuted into Athens every day. In private sector jobs, 6,800 commuted out and 2,200 stayed in. And so what that tells me, and I go back many, many years, that pattern's pretty much been the same for years and years. What that tells me is something really important is that being the county seat of Limestone County and also being adjacent to in part of a metro area, I cannot, through these numbers, in any way, shape, or form, call you a bedroom community. So I just love your reaction because I get a visceral reaction when I do this kind of work in communities like Athens when I say that word, bedroom community. Do you think you are? I mean, do you bristle when you hear that word? You know, is this an economy functioning on its own from an economic development standpoint in your mind? And say on its own, you know, part of the metro, but not dependent entirely on.
I would agree with that statement. I think we're independent. We don't rely on. I think it's definitely an asset, our proximity to Huntsville and the job opportunities there. We have a lot of great opportunities in Limestone County.
I can only speak from my vantage point, and I know you're with the greater Chamber of Commerce, right? And do we have a master marketing plan? That's not for how we market Athens is something more than a bedroom community. That's a question, because my answer to him is on my viewpoint, I think we are. And because when I look at from a planning commission point of view, all the house rooftops that we're improving, and I don't see the other amenities being improved that go along with those things. And I ask a question, as a small business owner, if I bring clients here and I want to take them out for a nice steak dinner, tell me what would I take them at? I mean, so we don't have those amenities, I think, that we would need to not call ourselves a bedroom community, because most people are going to Madison and Huntsville and those areas, spending their dollars. And when you start looking at what sustains the city is the revenue. I mean, a lot of people think, well, we're getting all these new houses, there's a lot of money coming in. That's the lowest tax rate you can get is that tax rate. When you need where the city makes the money is all that. And our sales tax dollars that could be staying here helping us grow this community, in my mind, are going to Madison, Huntsville, Nashville, and Birmingham. And so that's a problem for all of us around the table here to try to figure that out. What do we need? What do we have that we can market it in a way that makes people want to stay here and spend those dollars? And we have some great things, and at least we have a great structure. We have the bones. How do we build the muscle onto the bones that we have?
I agree with you. I think definitely retail restaurants is an area that we lack. And I think that's because we are dependent on Madison and Huntsville, where we go there for that experience dining or that experience shopping. On the flip side, we have people that come here for experience shopping. But I think when it comes for job, I think people do move to our area for the jobs and the opportunities that we have. But I do think that restaurants and retail is an area that we could definitely step up our game. Sure.
Okay.
I think one of the things that the contending is that really screwy law that was passed in 1984 with regard to essentially when it's in the Westwood March, Central Madison, Ford, Athens, and the way that it shows up is that if you are on county road, for example, they can strike a sweetheart deal as far as taxes are concerned, and you can choose to be indexed to Madison, Huntsville, or Madison County. So what that ends up doing, for example, is having 4 different law enforcement jurisdictions at times showing that interest. So what I'm getting at is that I think we have kind of a defensive posture emotionally when it comes to, if you're getting visceral about, visceral reactions about veteran community, it's like, yeah, there's this feeling of this relentless westward march rather than us growing well. And I'm not saying that I know the answers, but I think that the understanding of that problem can help you guys figure out some of our solutions, because we do feel defensive on one hand, and also we understand the need for other kinds of businesses and entities and that kind of thing. So it's real push-pull.
Yep. Boy, and I gotta tell you, I don't know if I could award a medal for a comment that just nailed it so good on what's puzzling me. And you just nailed it, is that 72 is a jigsaw puzzle
Yes.
of Huntsville, Madison, unincorporated Madison County, unincorporated Limestone County, Athens. And depending on where you throw the dart on that corridor, it's a gamble as to where you land. And if you think that's crazy, wait until you see where Buc-ee's is going in and how close that gets. And so I love the way you phrase it as a defensive posture, because when you look at the growth pattern of Huntsville as well, it has been westward bound, and all you have to do is take 72 and it's like you're past the third Chick-fil-A or the fourth Chick-fil-A or the third Target or the fourth Publix and whatever that may be. So you really nailed an insight that I'm still trying to get my arms around, my head around in the dynamics of it. And the other part that plays into your comment is that in spite of all that, you still attract more jobs. And then to put an exclamation point on your comment is that Alabama is one of the states where local jurisdictions are absolutely, that is the sales tax is a driver of local jurisdiction revenue stream, not ad valorem property tax. So what you have is a race for local governments to get as much retail as they can, because that is the driver of what puts money in the coffers, as opposed to ad valorem tax, property tax, which in other states equalizes the rate. Sorry, I'm turning into a market economist geek here, but I just want to echo that I'm confounded and puzzled and curious about learning more too. For example, and I'll just shut up because I want to hear more of y'all's thoughts, because y'all are really nailing it here, was that there was actually a celebration when Huntsville closed the circle around Madison. Like literally, I just found this out today, like literally they celebrated when they boxed Madison in. And I thought, that's just weird. So with that.
And then they boxed Madison and they kept going with the Western expansion of
they're marching this way.
They're trying to Huntsville at 65.
Right.
And so when you get east of 65, you may think you're in Athens, but you may be in Madison City or Huntsville. And one of the driving factors before we started development out there was SOAR, and one another reason. And communities was given the opportunity to decide, well, which one you want to be. Athens, we have septic for you. They like, Madison and Huntsville, okay, so we have the SOAR. They didn't talk about the subdivision tax rate, but they didn't think beyond that. And we threw out some statistics from the 2018 study. I think one of the things that's missing on that is we always talk about the number of people that's working here and the number of people leave Athens that go work somewhere else. There's some missing demographics that we don't include in that number. That's all the people that live in West Limestone and live in Orange County. that drive through us every day and do jobs in Huntsville. So we have to factor that in because those are opportunities because they drive through Huntsville and they could stop and shop. But it's also adding to our stress on our congestion on our roadways.
Because of growth further west even still.
Yeah, because we don't consider that we talk about congestion, those people probably don't spend a dime in Athens or Limestone County, but they use that 72 corridor to their jobs in Huntsville and Madison.
Well, and to your point, it's interesting when I look at there's a radar map of where the jobs come and go. And so where the jobs come into Athens, the radar map is to the west. Where the jobs commute out in Athens is, of course, to the east. So to your point, we know that some are just flowing right through. Others are coming in here and they're stopping because that's where their job is.
So we don't account for those, but you know, if you're driving and you're trying to get from point A to point B in Athens, you notice it, especially in the AM and PM during the rush hour period.
Well, and you're hitting on another thing that I'll share with the group that, again, you know, part of my job for this process to verify, throw some things out here is that when I just take the city limits of Athens, which I almost never do, because that's not a good way to run a market study. I mean, nobody, as we've just finished discussing, you know, no one's like, oh, this, well, in some cases it may be. This is in this particular jurisdiction, but the casual visitor is kind of like, well, I'm going to Target, you know, whatever the closest one is. But if we take Athens as a city, you are a game market. You sell $113 million more than people who live in the city can buy. But, and this is a huge but, when I start going to a 10-minute drive time, a 15-minute drive time, you go from a game market to elite market. And y'all, I mean, I can throw this out here and y'all gonna know exactly. Guess where you're gaining? Home center stores, building material and home center stores. General merchandise, Walmart. You're doing extremely well in what's categorized as limited service restaurants, fast food. And then you're leaking in a whole bunch of other categories. You're leaking in categories like sporting goods, clothing stores, full service dining, all those things that you all are talking about. And this is where the nail starts, where it gets fascinating, is that you are doing a good job performing in certain categories, but you're not performing well across all categories because of the retail dynamics of the region.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we just run into that. We don't have the population to sustain the big box stores, and we're included in the drive time to Madison. We're included in that.
Well, and you're hitting on the same dynamic too, is that what has happened is it's easier for that store. So if you think about where Bridgetown, we'll get the name right, Bridge Street almost is strategically plopped right in the population center of the greater metro. Because all those stores only want one. They're only going to have one in the market. There's only going to be one Apple store. There's only going to be one. It's just like Trader Joe's. We all kind of watched and waited. Where was Trader Joe's going to land? Well, now we know where it's landing, and it's not that development, but it's close by because it's smack in the middle. So it's a fascinating. Sorry, my geekdom takes over here. Part of my job, just to reassure you, is to figure out how we can get the things we want, but also be the reality check so that we're not dreaming unnecessarily and unpacking things like, when did this happen? Like, what are some things that happened that we need to just be aware of, not necessarily we can fix it, but so we can at least identify when did it start?
1984.
1984.
Rather difficult date in literature and every other practice. 1984 was when that was. I have one question. Chris talks about this. Is a solution possible to have something comparable to Bridge Street on smaller state, that kind of, Chris is concerned with this, it would be schlock. Could we do something like Providence with Rich Street 1.0 and have that be a way of putting in a good anchor for the exclusivity that we're talking about? Is that doable? Can we control it? Can we go for that and then hope that we don't just get forgiving Walmart tires? I mean, does the city have an ability to put in the kinds of controls to where you are able to say, yeah, we want good stuff here, not schlock? Can we do that?
Like those developers have to figure it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the numbers.
Everything's not.
The incomes aren't there, the cost of construction is so high, the rent is gonna be too expensive. You know, that's the main thing.
I thought we were going the other day, and his concern of that was that the retail leakage is already happening. How does he stand tied when he puts something here?
Well, and then I come out, again, there'll be a meeting of the Main Street program tomorrow, so I draw a pretty bright line between suburban style chain retail and independent retail. One of the things I find fascinating about the greater metro writ large, is that it's a multi-nodal region. So I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, and our downtown and the downtowns of the cities around us are each very vibrant because they each have a niche. Huntsville Metro is a little different. Athens has a very strong downtown when you put it up against some of the other downtowns around the region. But Huntsville's downtown itself is good, but a work in progress. Then you have Providence, which is its own thing. I'm working in South Huntsville. They're getting ready to build Hayes Farm, another town center there with Bridge Street, another, I won't call it town center, but with the redevelopment of the mall, you get these nodes that are happening in the metro. And so it's a fascinating question. It's one that I'm going to work really hard on the next couple of days to see how we can figure it out. And it may depend on nuances and not doing it for chain style development, and maybe doing it more on how do we look at downtown and continue to make it vibrant? Are there other mini nodes that we can look at that could have specialty retail that would work and feel right in neighborhoods or adjacent to neighborhoods?
And this is a question I asked. I asked the question, do we have a greater marketing plan for Huntsville as far as development? And the reason I asked that question is numbers drives everything. And if you don't have the numbers, retailers are not gonna come here. But we're looking at a lot of growth in the near future. We have already approved 54 housing units. I mean, we got meetings and we're gonna approve some more tomorrow. And we look at all this growth so we can develop a marketing plan and we can talk about this is our growth projections and this is where the people are going. And so you won't be the first, this is gonna be hot and you won't be the first person in the door. So we need to have that marketing plan so we can go to those retailers and say, hey, this here, we're gonna be big. And we're gonna be hot and we're going like crazy. You will be the first one.
I love your position on this. I love what you're saying, and I'm picking up what you're putting down. So, what's happening in the next 5 years, I'm showing, we showed a very slow growth projection. I've revised up that growth projection today because the numbers of building permits and other trends that we're seeing contradict the conservative projection that I have. That being said, I also have retail growth projections based on that conservative one, and you equalize in 5 years. So to your point, it's almost exactly how you phrased it is, are you really going to miss out on the most incredible opportunity?
Probably in the state.
Right.
The most incredible opportunity in the state.
Right.
And so we need to start selling that now. And that needs to be our pitch going forward as a community, as a chamber of commerce, as a city government. Hey, let me show you our growth projection numbers. Let me show you all the houses development we already approved. Let me even show you where they're going.
But let us
you-
show you our downtown
Let
and
me
in
show
this
you our
fabulous
downtown.
square. Let us show you our historic neighborhoods. Let's show you that we're a true community. That gives a whole other perspective too, that makes it attractive. And I remember working in Greer, South Carolina years and years ago. And, you know, we talked, they're right between Greenville and Spartanburg, and their downtown was kind of down and out. And BMW had just located there. And that downtown now has got 18 restaurants. They've got Hampton Inn coming into their downtown. They've got residential development adjacent to their downtown. And before, you know, if you'd said fine dining in Greer, South Carolina, people would have laughed you out of the room. Now, Athens is already way ahead.
So that's the point I brought up to some people.
No, I was just gonna say, so, right after the announcement from Austin Toyota, the chamber, city, county, economic development, we kind of all partnered together and we have a marketing video that we made to kind of announce, you know, we've got jobs here. We wanted to show our community, show our quality of life. You know, made that available to our industry as they're trying to recruit people. But, you know, as far as a real plan to go out and recruit people to the area, I would say that's probably not something we, as a organization or collectively with city and county, have really developed a plan for that.
Well, I see this year did a lot of exactly what you're saying. To try to find history, that culture, brand, et cetera. And it's very fractured. You can not go to one place. Other places are telling different stories. So I firmly believe that there's tons of room for growth. They have one voice. Yeah. Everybody got to be on the same shoes, preaching the same song over and over and over again. And you're right, we have a great downtown. But if you were a casual observer coming to Athens and you're get off 65 or get off 72, if you guys don't know the term Jefferson Street, you would never know how great our downtown is. And I heard that we have little small signs that say historical downtown, but I've never seen them. So they may be there, but we're not doing a good job of where's the sign on the highway that said, welcome to Athens, the historical downtown. And so when they turn off there, I said, well, I need to get some gas and need to stretch my legs. Let me go find this historical downtown.
Well, you've hit another nail on the head. It's that I was working in Enterprise, Alabama 2 weeks ago. If y'all have ever been to Enterprise and driven Holy Eagle Circle, first of all, downtown Enterprise is charming as Dickens. It's got some great things going on. If you've driven Bowl Eagle Circle, which orbits around the city, not one single sign saying downtown anywhere. AlDOT does a great job of getting you out, but does not get you into that city. So once you hit Bowl Eagle Circle and whatever McDonald's or fast food joint you hit, you think you've made it to Enterprise, but you still need to go another mile to get to downtown. And then you're like, oh my gosh, there's the Bowl Eagle.
Yeah, because somebody there was one of the things we were talking about, Main Street and downtown, we put those two together, like they're synonymous. They're not synonymous. We don't have a Main Street. We may call something Main Street. To me, the Main Street in Athens is 72. So how are we marketing our Main Street of one of these streets down here as our Main Street? That's just a question.
So Trisha online has a question, her hand raised, so I think she's been waiting patiently, so.
No, it's been good conversation. Well, I mean, just with all the rooftops, I wanted to pick your brain trip on capturing those potential entrepreneurs. You know, that we don't know why exactly all these people are moving here, but if they're going to the Arsenal, that maybe they have a spouse that is going to want to open up a business. And I really see that as a great potential for Athens, downtown Athens, 72, wherever. But I just wanted to see what you've seen as far as capturing kind of local entrepreneurs before we start reaching out and trying to recruit others.
So we've done a little bit of market analysis. We are trying to do additional market analysis. There was a task force formed by the city, the mayor's office, to look at turning where we're hosting all this into an entrepreneurial center, so that we could focus on business development. That's about as far as it's gone. So, you know, I think to your point, Tricia, and I kind of would piggyback on that to Tripp of talking about Greer and other communities. Who's leading that? Because I don't see a city that's stepping up saying, we want this, we're going to invest in this type of opportunity. I see a city that says, you all invest and we'll sit back and show up for the ribbon cutting. And until that changes, then we can talk about economic and business development, but it's jobs and the unincorporated areas, not investments into small business and into entrepreneurs and into people who lived here and building up a downtown corridor that can spiral into Providence 1.0 or whatever.
Well, you're singing my song, and first of all, as we go through this process, part of my job, I have a pretty distinct piece of this, and that's dealing with the market, the economic development piece of this. And so, worked in Pascagoula where we created a micro retail space with 17 Katrina cottages that the chamber, county economic development, the city, all partnered to review business plans. Had 17 spaces, 40 applicants. About 5 of those moved out. Have the odd situation of it's now 11 years old and we're killing them. We're recommending it get torn down. We're moving them because that site's better for something else now. But at the time, it was the right thing at the right spot. Now that needs to move. The other thing is, I worked actively in a community in Loudoun County, Virginia, which was the fastest growing county in the United States, I think, until Limestone County overtook it, where we identified, it was a very strange process because we were kind of on the like, well, I don't know, how are we going to catch the trailing spouts? How do we figure out who they are? We ended up pulling all the home business permits and actually reaching out to the people who got home business permits and said, would you be interested in the space? And that was kind of like the beginning of just direct outreach to people saying, are you tired of working in your basement? Would you like to have a space?
Well, I have a whole business permit and I would love
Trailer
to
city.
do that from
And then and then you start saying, well, okay, if there's one of you, if we're in a room of 300, are there 5?
So, every bit of research that's coming out post-COVID on entrepreneurship says it's booming across the nation and that the road to recovery, particularly in rural areas, is going to be entrepreneurship. So, we're working and interested in finding partners. I wish the city showed more interest in this because this would directly feed that tax base and put jobs and create opportunities and maybe some old buildings and everything. But I think this comes back, in my opinion, the leadership issue. I don't mind speaking out about it.
Trisha's raising her hand again.
Well, just to piggyback on what Tripp was talking about, when we start, you can go on Etsy and do a search to see who is running a business from Etsy right now and start tapping into them and finding them a place in actually a brick and mortar. So when you start thinking about we need to start thinking about small scale manufacturing too, I guess, in addition to those entrepreneurs. So, being open-minded on finding them a space, a workspace to be able to make their product as well as sell them in our community.
And I think to that, it's not just the makers, it's also the bakers and the cookers, chefs, who maybe they're not ready to have a full restaurant, but they want a commercial kitchen where they can get their product to market, or a catering, a prep kitchen or things like that to begin that process.
My dream is that with some of the federal money that the city and county is receiving, that again has a lot of tie-ins to where they have to spend it, that we could develop a COVID response unity for small business that would address a commercial kitchen for micro businesses.
If you start thinking about everything y'all are doing, thinking about in this conversation where, all right, we're going to encourage entrepreneurship, small scale manufacturing, keeping the job here, and spouses, and having space, all of a sudden you're starting to say, well, then we're going to, by having space, we'll capture our retail leakage. We'll have something that's different. We won't be like the Strip and the Chipotle's and Chick-fil-A's, we'll be our own thing. That doesn't preclude those other things from happening. and then we reinforce our hometown feel. Well, that sounds like a win and a win and a win and a win. So,
We need to have something for our children. We had batting cages, and we had putt-putt, and we had bowling, we had skating rink. We have none of that. None.
all gone now.
It is gone. And you know who rules the family is the children. If they want to go to Huntsville and go to Top Golf, then they're going to go to Top Golf, and they're going to eat while they're over there, and they're going to fill up with gas while they're over there. And then tourism money's over
And heaven
there.
forbid you're forced to eat at Chuck E. Cheese.
But yeah, we really need something for our kids, because that's a huge leap.
Hey, I'm just gonna say one more thing so I can get on the record, but just with the entrepreneurial center, that commercial kitchen would be awesome to be a part of that. So I'll be quiet.
Well, I think right along with that, with a business, let's say, what do you call it, full service restaurant? Say my former chef wants to become a chef again. And we love walking through here, especially at night, but like after 5 o'clock, there's almost nothing open. There's nothing to do here really. And the last thing we want to do is be walking around people's, front yards, and they're going to, who's out there? What are they doing here? But there's nothing to do here because there's nobody willing either to stay open that late. Now, if you have, a willing chef that wants to come and open up that restaurant with the Asian Latin cuisine fusion, and they're, we're willing to stay open till past 8 o'clock, past 9 o'clock at night. Maybe open up I noticed Sundays, even the Chick-fil-A's are closed Sundays. Now, I understand that, what did they explain? Where the, now living by the Bible Gateway? Okay, Bible, what is it called? Belton, thank you. However, families that come out of church would like to go out for lunch, would like to go out for dinner, give mom a break from cooking. And those are things that, obviously people, or hopefully more people would be willing to do. And if we had our own little apartment on top of our business, where, you just literally roll out of bed, fall down the stairs and go to work, it works. But then that would talk about, what is it, rezoning? Is that what they talk about? Where?
There are live work provisions in the current zoning.
Okay. That's.
We had another question online too that mentioned of zoning. Somebody had said too, are there zoning issues or restrictions that are put into place on businesses that are kind of hurting our growth, such as Limestone County being a dry county, stopping microbreweries and gastropubs?
Yes.
I feel a lot of head nods.
Yeah.
So is it still a dry county?
The county is.
The city isn't. So is Limestone County dry, or is it Sunday dry?
It's dry.
And y'all. Yeah, I was gonna say, there are plenty of dry counties, and turns out they're not as dry as you think they are.
The city only.
No,
It's been in the past 4 or 5 years of the city.
Sundays.
So Sunday sales. So, every state's different, and all the liquor laws are crazy because they're post-prohibition. Y'all are still in the halo period. Please understand that Athens is in the halo period. I'm from South Carolina. We dealt with Sunday sales about a decade ago, and pretty much in Greenville, we had Sunday sales. We never had dry. I mean, there's no such thing as dry, but Sunday sales. But when y'all have liquor and they don't, you're in the halo period. And I promise you, and I mean this no disrespect to anybody, but I'm seeing this trend. We talk about Bible Belt. I live in Buckle. Is that we're seeing jurisdiction by jurisdiction pass, go wet. And so the halo period is when you have it and the others don't, and that's when you need to capitalize on it and also demonstrate that it doesn't cause the town to collapse into a pile of ruin, as a result. So, and I go back to Greer. I mean, Greer was a community, they voted Sunday sales in early. And they really won out because all the stuff by the airport, all the stuff by BMW couldn't sell on Sunday. And they raked it money for a while.
That's one.
I was gonna go back on yours where people go into Madison and big box stores for the shopping experience. That's probably one of the worst experiences I have in my life. But, I would rather have the experience here, and I do. I do go to big box Lowe's. There are other stores I do go for stuff here that I can get at Lowe's. But what I see is one of the biggest problems. I don't want the big box stores in Athens because people are still gonna go in there and they're eventually gonna close. Those big box stores are gonna shut down like you've seen, the malls. Target's in-store sales have gone down dramatically because of online, and I can pick it up at the curb. They don't go in to shop anymore. But one thing I see, and this will be tomorrow morning's discussion in the downtown area, I see these great storefronts here. Yes, they do close at 5. There's a few restaurants on the north side that stay open as people come down here at night for. But there's nothing else for people to do. I see, and I hate what happens around every courthouse is, how many law offices do you have here who have great storefronts? I mean, they don't draw in any sales tax at all. None, zero, let alone any foot traffic, except walking across the street to go defend their client who can't afford to shop down here. But, you got upstairs for them, city, move the lawyers upstairs where they think they are above everybody else. Put the stores downstairs and get people down here at night with some more restaurants that can play that on the south side, so people are wandering the square. We have a German restaurant eventually coming in. Love that idea too, because I like eating here instead of going into that part of town. I'd love to see that when it comes to getting those small businesses into a place. I go down there the other side of Jefferson over by Tractor Supply. You've got some big box stores in there that are empty. That should be properly utilized. And there's people I know who live in Rogersville, work in Huntsville on the Mercenary. And they go into Florence to shop because they don't want to drive all the way back in here to go to Madison. But if there were stores like the sporting goods stores, it doesn't have to be a big one, it doesn't have to be Academy Sports. But a lot of people around here fish and hunt. And there's little leagues around here and everything else. Parents would rather come in here to town, price comparable, than riding to Madison and deal with that nightmare and get everything they need right here, especially if they're coming from Elkmont.
The thing about, I work in Scottsboro and they have a sporting goods store on the square. And that's where all the parents in Little League go to the sporting goods store on the square to get the uniforms.
So in my mind, when I think of economic development, I would like to draw a pie chart just based on 24-hour clock when you put it into wages. And then I would like to add influence of age-based influence on that. Because everybody sitting around this table here, we're probably in bed by 9 o'clock, and we're more focused on saving for retirement and spending. The youth people, that age demographic from about 21 to 30 are the ones spending all the dollars. And when you look at that wedge chart, where they spend most of their dollars at is from the hours of 9 to 1. And so you look at where Athens stayed on that wedge chart based on that age-based influence, we're probably losing 95% of those dollars been spent by our population base in that age group, because we have nothing for them to do. So all those dollars, that is the most economic viable spot on the clock because they spend money. We're just saving, they're having a good time enjoying life. And all those dollars are going to unskilled, Birmingham on that scale. How are we going to capture that piece of the pie?
I think some of that relates to workforce. The trip, what are your thoughts on workforce development in a town of 25,000 people that's an emerging, growing economy, that's in a metro region? What is the place for an Athens in that regard to strengthen the workforce or do even workforce development?
You're hitting on a couple of things. I'm not sure I know the full answer yet, but there are a couple of things that jump off the page when I look at the numbers is you're slightly off in the city, slightly off on median household income. It's not enough to make much or on that scale. It's 58 compared to 62 or 63 in the county. And then your unemployment rate is really low. So it would seem to me, and I've got to dig deeper in the numbers to look, it would seem to me that we have a workforce that's coming in is probably not quite getting paid what they could or should. So I think it may circle back to some of this entrepreneurship piece. And I'll admit, from an economic development standpoint, workforce development is one of my weaker understanding points. So I may be looking to others for advice on that. So.
If I can ask, I understand the private sector, opening up your own restaurant, the chain places. Now, what about grants? Like, for example, I've been a senior center director for about 10 years. I don't see any senior centers down here. Now, it may be that there's no seniors that want to leave home to go congregate with other seniors, or is it just that there is no place for seniors to go and congregate with other people of their age? Same thing like with the community centers for the kids. There is no community centers. There is no YMCA. There is no recreation place. And all of these things bring that stronger sense of community, which seems
Yeah. Pandemic has had them closed up, so that they have buses and everything that take them out to Walmart and grocery, the doctor, things like that,
But I think
dialysis.
This
We
goes-
also, I think we need sports clubs, the brand new sports club, might doesn't get as what was like YMCA. So perhaps just reframing what is available might end up opening up some ideas to creativity, because we did just open up that something really appropriate.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous, but I do think that we need more people accessing, really utilizing it, because it is an amazing facility.
I think this is kind of back to the point on the marketing piece, knowing, when the plant came in, heaven knows that we all have been living in this kind of weird, and even those of us who know better don't sometimes remember. I mean, I'm finding myself even doing that, where it's like, oh yeah, I haven't been there all year long. And then I was like, and then I kind of get mad at myself. I was like, well, they didn't even close, And so this may be a chance to tell the story to people who live here, and also tell the story to people who've moved here, and also tell the story to people who might live here. You're welcome to a community that's more complete than you thought, because this last year's kind of been heads down and routine's pretty tight.
And fourth piece that tell the stories of potential entrepreneurs. And I look at us as a build a dreams community. If somebody come build it, they will come.
I've got a question. Now, we're doing the Athens project, and it's gonna bring about 5 million people here to Athens. It'll be about 2 to 3 million of those people will be from 30 miles of rural away. How can we capture more of those people to spend money and to more reside in Athens or people from this area? I think the city and the county, I think our environmental thing is just awesome right now with the road, with Mazda 12, the things like you mentioned, sports complex, and a lot of other things that's been done. And I think overall, the community, we're one of the best communities and one of the most progressive communities as far as moving things forward. So how do we keep up with the pace now that things are just get even more rapid over the next 2 to 3 years? And what can we do? The downtown area, everybody knows it's awesome, but it's took a lot of people a lot longer to work to do that. But now that we're at this I think it's at a critical point to be able to grow even at a greater accelerated pace, you know, in all of the areas. And how can we as a community and everybody come together to embrace that, get more and more people to enjoy the things that all of us enjoy without losing on them. At the same time, as where our kids and grandkids can live. I think it's a big untapped place that we're gonna see some stuff that's different than it's ever been before.
Well, and again, what an interesting point. I mean, so Bucky's, you know, when you look at when that store opens, it will itself represent a 2% bump in sales tax for the city as a whole. One establishment. And I'm a downtown guy, don't get me wrong. I never thought I would sing the praises of a convenience store. So I'm also the guy that drove 45 minutes out of my way to meet my ex-wife to get my son the other week to go to Leeds so that we could have lunch at Bucky's. So that gives you kind of an idea. And it is a fascinating piece when you say, all right, this may seem incongruent at first. How do we make it congruent?
That's correct.
And so that's a fascinating thing. And then the other part I keep thinking about too is the halo effect. Is I know in Texas, in Oklahoma, they're going to be more frequent, but the business model, typically the further away you get from home, the more they're going to want to maximize individual store sales. So right now it's Southern Alabama, Central Alabama, Northern Alabama. My hypothesis, and I could be wrong, is that they're probably not going to open a lot more in the state. They're probably going to move further toward the east and, you know, four total in the state. Well, that makes perfect sense because there's one big hole left. I imagine somewhere between Marino and Lockton or something like that.
So the challenge to us.
Boy, I'm pretty good at location.
The challenge to us at this table is that if you look at the Bucky Toyota corridor, which is in the southeast corner of the city. So that's gonna be the new epicenter of the city. So everything gonna wanna go there. How do we keep people interested in coming downtown and those things? So we have to build that into our plan when we sit down and think about things, because everything gonna want to migrate there because it's new, it's great, and that we're making Huntsville, Brown Ferry 4-lane, and so everything gonna want to migrate there. And then the folks gonna take it out downtown, although how great it is.
Well,
so we have to have a plan.
It's a great point. That's part of what I think when we work on this plan, we think through that. I've worked on a lot of plans where we see an emerging node like that, and we make sure that some of that revenue stream is kind of preordained and pre-understood to funnel back into entrepreneurial programs, the other economic development programs. Catch it on the front end, because as soon as it goes into the general fund, it's hard to recapture it again. This is the time to start having those conversations so that it's not a revenue stream that people have already budgeted for. It's like, okay, we're going to take 10% of that and we're going to put it into a fund for entrepreneurship and economic development. And for here and ever after, that's what it will be in this district. I mean, as you start thinking about the creative ways to do that, some of these have to be creative because they may not even be legislatively allowed.
But to answer this question, sir, I think how do we get ahead of that is what we're doing now. We all sit around the table and we start planning and start looking at these things. I think we have done some great things in Athens, but I think all the efforts have been disjointed. They have been looked at in isolation. And we have never sat down and looked at everything as one ruined whole package. And so you either plan to succeed or you plan to fail. And so this is it. And we need to have more meetings like this here. And we need to sit down and make sure we don't look at, oh, the Pilgrim Pride thing in isolation, the Bucky's in isolation. We have to look at it as a whole. And this is, you know, on the plan commission I pushed for and say, you know, we have to get a new master plan because I divided, I said, before Toyota and after Toyota. So we were living before Toyota. The world has changed. Whether we want it to change or not as a community, Once Toyota came to our doorstep, it's changed, and we can either get in front of, get behind the ball or in front of the ball. It's the choice of art, because the ball is rolling.
Well, and to take the metaphor and stretch it, maybe straighten it, is that I made observations to some of my teammates earlier is in order to maintain the small town character of Athens, Athens can no longer perform like a small town community. It's got to perform like a sophisticated, well-oiled machine in order to maintain the small town feel. And that is something that when I hear this, I get enthusiastic because I can tell in the room, it's all here. You know, it's not like it's a tough nut to crack, but if once we put the pieces together, we've got to put the pieces together in the plan the right way.
One thing, I know the sidewalks are not ready to roll up. My truck's parked out there, so I won't lose it. But, one thing that I've mentioned it before yesterday, and I had another discussion on it today, that this town does not do a good job of, and they have a wealth of it in this town, is there's people like me and others who have backgrounds that can be utilized, who are retired and looking for things to do. I mean, I'm positive there's people from the university, and I'm positive there's gentlemen around the golf course who are getting tired of having the same conversations every day on the same 18 holes, and would like a good challenge. The one thing about it that the city doesn't have to worry about is they're free. Okay, and I speak from what my father did in a town called Prescott, Ontario, where he was retired. He got together with a bunch of old guys who had wanted something to do. That town lost 1,000 people in 2 years. And they got done with their plan on putting the town back together. The town grew to 10,000 in less than 4. Okay, just by having what they call fun. Because right now you got coffee club at Bojangles. Those guys have ideas. You've got people who meet at the senior center who something to do. There's people all over this town who want something to do.
And maybe
they'd be willing to do it too.
I'm just looking at, if y'all heard of SCORE, SCORE is, let me get this wrong. It's the Society of Retired Executive, I can't remember exactly. It's works with the Small Business Administration, and it's retired executives who volunteer their time to help mentor others. And there are 4 chapters in Alabama: Birmingham, Montgomery, Anniston, and Fairhope. And so there's a giant hole somewhere around here that may be an appropriate place. And typically what SCORE tends to do is work with SBDC and with SBA. And it attracts retirees to be mentors for not retired, I won't say younger, not retired others who are entrepreneurs.
Well, it is about 10 minutes now. And
I'd like to say one more thing, sorry. It's nice to hear that there's people in the room that are supportive of entrepreneurship. I mean, I myself am also very pro entrepreneurial creativity. I consider myself a little bit a part of that, considering that I started last year my architecture firm here in town. I moved here and it was just me. And a year later, I now have, we're at 5 people on staff, just trying to, and we're going to be moving into a building downtown. And I think that we're very interested in creating that creativity and entrepreneurship kind of air or atmosphere, and helping promote that within Athens. There are active projects in downtown that I can say that are going to increase some of this kind of blight of entertainment that I've heard people discuss, that you can't get an experience, I guess. So, and I agree with those. And then a little word to my fellow commissioner who's off camera. The fact that anything but downtown would be the epicenter is scary to me. So let's let's not do that.
Yeah, Brad.
Well, y'all, thank you. This has been, I love hearing your input in this meet. Got me super excited to do. I was already excited to do good work for everyone, do my best to do really good work and back it up. You've answered a lot of questions I had. So I'll dig into the research more and get some good things out because it's really fun to be working with you. So, thanks, Sean.
Very, very good. I love all your data.